I just got the physical game, and it's a total blast. And yeah, and I'm very one of the things I'm very excited about in this listening party is because I think a lot of people here, for a lot of people here, this will be the introduction to the music of Trevor Casterline, and I've got to say it's pretty friggin' amazing. I think Trevor has a really keen musical ear and is an awesome composer, and I'm just super excited for to be with you as kind of people get to hear your work, and I really hope to hear more music from you in the future.
Well, thanks, Jean-Marc. That's very kind of you.
All right, so oh, sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was gonna say this is a lot of fun, so I'm excited to kind of get right into it. Do you want to talk a little bit about the first track? We're gonna go through all of the tracks on the album. So if you're tuning in, you're gonna hear the entire album.
Yeah, we're gonna play the whole thing. It's not just sound little samples of them. There's gonna play the whole thing. So, all right. So let's get into the music.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
the first one we've got up is Lazer Ryderz.
Yeah. So to give you a little bit of background here, Lazer Ryderz. This one's composed by the glorious Jean-Marc there, and basically, the entire story of the Lazer Ryderz game is based around the idea that there are 4 characters from a totally rad Saturday morning space opera cartoon. And like I kind of said earlier, each character has their own goal and destination, but getting there is always the hard part. So in the deepest pockets of space, there exist these power prisms, or leftover artifacts from intergalactic beings of a bygone era. And activating 3 prisms allows the riders to charge up and pass through to new destinations in the galaxy. But if more than one rider is present, the sentient prisms create a laser grid arena and the race is on. The portal only allows one rider to pass through before moving on to a new location, leaving our other riders in the dust and continuing on their quest to find the next set of power prisms. So this track is basically the theme song to our Saturday morning cartoon. So Jean-Marc or Trevor, unless you've got a few other notes, then without further ado, I introduce you to Lazer Ryderz. Trevor, if you want to roll that tape.
All right. Cool.
Woohoo.
That was fun.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, out of all the tracks, this was the one I spent the most time with, because this was sort of like the very beginning. We were just making this for the video, and it's kind of like, well, what does this soundtrack sound like? I mean, even within retro wave and all that, there's a lot of variety. So, so Trevor and I spent sort of a lot of time researching and investigating and trying out some different things. And then, we had to decide sort of how it was mixed and how 80s technology it needed to sound versus, just the style and the mastering and all that. So, yeah, and I feel like, I was always doing this. It kind of put me right in the middle of how I remember the 80s. Not necessarily what it actually was, just what I remember it being, because that's just how nostalgia works. Yeah, so this one kind of set the tone for the album. So
yeah, I definitely think it's a cool signature track. Really encapsulates kind of everything that the game and the soundtrack is going to be about. So I thought it was really solid. It was really exciting to work with this one, because a version of this was what was the Kickstarter video. So you did your research, and I think it really paid off.
cool.
Yeah, it was really exciting to hear this one progress from the iteration in the Kickstarter video to this final version, which is, obviously much longer and much more thought out and whatnot. But you still, just right from the get-go, it felt like you two really just nailed that whole vibe of that 80s Saturday morning cartoon excitement and fun that we were going for through the entire game. So I know as soon as we heard just 30 seconds of this track here in the office, we were all like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing.
All right. Well, I'm very happy that that it all worked out the way you were imagining it, because it's possible for two groups to have great ideas, but they're not the same ideas.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So what have we got up next?
All right, so the next track we've got here is the last Carchonian, or our Laser Shark theme. So to give everyone a little bit of background here, this track was composed by Trevor, and some character background to get you in the mood, get you in the feel for this song. Lazer Shark is the last surviving member of the Carchonian Empire, an empire once located in the Spyrenade galaxy. They were an extremely aggressive race bent on domination and expansion, and eventually a coalition was formed to eradicate the Empire. Now, Lazer Shark, a mercilessly insatiable predator equipped in her cybernetic battlesuit, now roams the galaxy on the hunt for the fabled Blood Nebula. The power prisms are the final key in her search so that she can find a place to give rise to her species once again. So let's listen to The Last Carchonian.
All right, and we're back.
Woohoo.
So,
All right, Trevor. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your track?
sure. So this was a fun one to work on. I really liked the idea of the laser shark as a character. I wanted it to be aggressive and percussive. There's a couple thematic things that I was doing with there's maybe a little bit of a Jaws reference. There's a lot of, yeah, maybe a little bit. And then there's a lot of harsher tones, some of the synth stuff. I just wanted to be really aggressive, and just overall, yeah, just really impactful. And yeah, I think it turned out, pretty good. I think I had a little bit of trouble with getting that bass line to really fit the way that I wanted to, because it is sort of the melody, at least initially, and that took a little bit of time. But I do like where it kind of not too harsh, not too dull, with a little bit of distortion, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like the contrast behind like the hard aggressive notes, especially in the bass, and then sort of the space between them, and the up high, and like and then when those chords kick in, like they're really like just these like full on like wall of sound chords that were really common at the time. And that's a really solid character track, I think.
Yeah.
There was a question in the chat about some of the sounds we used. I can't go over, like, obviously I can't go over everything, but the quick version, there were sort of four main ones that we used, or at least that I used. Trevor may have used a couple that I didn't. One was Sonic Foundry Anna. It's a relatively inexpensive synth that is reasonably powerful, but also less complicated than a lot of, like, some of these synths are pretty archaic. But that one was pretty good to use. The Korg Monopoly, which is part of the Korg Legacy Collection, was a really good one. And then there's a couple of free ones as well. The PG8X, which I learned about from the Reaper blog, and the SQ8L, which is, I mostly just used the presets for that because I couldn't figure out what anything did in it.
But a lot of the presets are really good.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. And yeah, the last two are free. So there's, if this is the kind of music you're into, those have been demonstrated here. All right. So what do we have next, Jennifer?
Okay, so next we have Hangin 10 on Paradise 3. This is Galactic Waveryder's theme. So some backstory here. Galactic Waveryder is the raddest solar rider in the known universe. He's shredded every location from the Murad Rings to the Amato Gravity Well and even J1407b. He's a 10-time champion of the Grand Kahuna Award, and he hails from the beach world of Paradise 3. Bored by the mundane thrills of diving headfirst into exploding suns, he now seeks experiences beyond the limits of the High Gnarly Council's understanding. With his experimental hyperboard, he's surfing to the outer reaches of space to unlock the most tubular experience of all time, the Omega Wave. Hit it, Trevor.
All right. Sweet. Tubular.
I love that. I think that's one of my favorites. Like the way that Jean-Marc just captured the vibe of like that those old 50s surfer movies and brought in that 80s feel to it. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Well,
it really reminds me of like, I don't know, Sega Genesis or some old video game like level or something. I feel like we're it's like a surfing game or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, all of those things sort of tie into what I was thinking, because like when they mentioned that they wanted like a synthwave music for a surfer, I was like, okay, because most surf music that I was familiar with was like from the 60s, the Beach Boys or whatever, and so I was like trying to think of what an 80s version of that would sound like. And then I was like, oh yeah, there were some surfer dudes in the 80s, the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
So, and I played like a lot of the Ninja Turtle games when I was a kid, and obviously watched the show, but I felt like the game music stuck with me more, other than the theme song for the show, of course. And so I was just like, yeah, I could probably try blending those two ideas together. And then Turtles in Time in particular had a lot of those those orchestra hits. So I kind of abused those a little bit in this one, because it's just like nobody uses those anymore. So you got to go a little over the top with it.
Yeah. It's the 80s. Everything's over the top.
That's
true. And then at one point there, I added a little bit of DuckTales bass to it, because it worked. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it was a lot of fun to do that. It was hard to mix, very hard to mix, but
yeah. I remember when we kind of gave that one to you, you were like, you want what now? But you nailed it. You really did.
Yeah, well, you want what now is my reaction to a lot of ideas at first, and I figure something out.
That's what we're here for, to keep you on your toes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always a lot of fun. I mean, that's one of the things I've enjoyed most about working on Sentinels, is it's like every track is nothing like the other tracks, because it's not supposed to be. So
yeah, and that's definitely something that we definitely also chose to do for this album. We wanted to make each one pretty distinct, pretty unique. And I was talking with Jen earlier about it, and it was just like, do you want it to all be like just strict synthwave or like 80s celebration in general? And we definitely wanted it to be about a lot of different things, a lot of nostalgia. We wanted the nostalgia factor to be high. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right, so what have we got next, Jennifer?
So we've got The Legend of Titan 13. This is Phantom Cosmonaut's theme. Phantom Cosmonaut is the shadowy figure you think you saw in the back of the corner of your eye, but you're never quite sure. That glow that catches your attention for a moment and then it's gone. Not much is truly known about him. Is he the haunted body of some ancient astronaut? Is he the echoed reflection of another dimension? No one really knows. He's kind of the boogeyman of the galaxy, present in both the stories of bygone years and accidents of today. Rumor has it he was present when the residents of Ursa Mining Company met their demise, and when Titan 13 imploded. We don't know his reason for seeking the prisms, but we do know that whenever he's near, trouble isn't far behind. Play that song, Trevor.
All right. That was spooky.
I love that one. I love that like beacon and all the just like drifting space sounds that you got in the background. Oh, I remember when we were talking about that one, that one of the things that I had actually asked for was like, can we get some sort of like beacons or transmissions or static or things like that? And you guys just really pulled it together. And Jean-Marc came back and he was like, yeah, how's this sound? And we were, that's perfect. That's just what we were thinking. So.
Yeah, with the transmission sound, I wanted to make sure that it was indistinct. It was like you could tell that there was talking, but it wasn't like English or anything. Like it wasn't even a known language. It was just sort of like voices. But yeah, like when I first started, I wasn't quite sure what this one would sound like. But I was just based on the imagery. It's like, well, it has to be creepy and it should sound spacey. Like I guess in some ways this is more similar to the way I do environment music and Sentinels. I just basically like poke around all sorts of different corners to find sounds that I think will match like sort of the atmosphere as opposed to like what the melodic theme is. I don't worry as much about that. And so I definitely did that a lot with this one and just kind of like picked I had a list of, I don't know, 30 different things that went along with it. And then it got to the arrangement phase and I just started playing like these spacey chords and then putting like different, like trying to play different synths on top of it. And one of them is very similar to the Ghostbusters lead, like towards the end. Bow, bow, bow.
Oh, yeah.
Bow, bow, bow. So I made one that was similar to that and then used that at one point. And then I kind of got a good idea as to what this track should sound like. So
yeah, I think it turned out really, really well.
Yeah, it was really cool. I really like the pitch bending you do, the sort of the chromaticism.
Yeah.
Starts higher and it kind of goes down and you're not always sure what key we're in exactly, but it was really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay.
All right.
So
cool.
Next we've got Blazing the Startrail. This is our Super Sheriff theme. Super Sheriff is the greatest member of the elite force, the Lost Star Rangers. With a totally untarnished record and 100% capture rate, she pursues outlaws in the wilds of space, beyond the reach of the Universal Coalition. Atop her laser steed with her trusty sidearm and her power armor, she's brought in criminals such as the Black Hole Gang, Banditotron 2000, and the Star Crusher Boys. Her current mission is to blaze a trail to distant power prisms and lock them down, preventing the escape of any ne'er-do-wells. Trevor, go ahead and play it.
All right. Super Sheriff.
Woohoo.
So,
I know, just from quick art note, this was one that we really had a good time creating with the artist because of that laser steed. This was definitely one of our more challenging but more favorite pieces to work on. And that whole time that we were creating the art for this, it was really interesting because we kind of had that, like, okay, corral, like, how do we bring that type of feeling into the 80s but into the future? And so, like, it was kind of fun to see that going on in the art at the same time that it was going on with the music that was being crafted in the background. So that was a part for me anyway that was really fun to see how that was all getting brought together.
yeah, I had a lot of fun. It's sort of, I started kind of with the idea of a bass line, because I thought you could get kind of that galloping through space sort of feeling, and then it sort of kind of it developed into something that I think Jean-Marc, you described it to me as spaghetti western meets synthwave or something, sort of a hybrid idea. So yeah, I mean, it was one of the earlier pieces that I definitely worked on, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It definitely, I think it's definitely a hybrid and sort of a unique take on. I wasn't sure exactly where we were going with Super Sheriff in the beginning, but I was definitely happy about how it came out.
Yeah. No, I mean, you brought a lot of that character into the music. You hear kind of that the whistling, or allusions to that idea of whistling, like the spaghetti westerns, and you kind of hear a little bit of horse hooves in the background, and the way that the beat comes in, and I thought it all came together really well for that one. It really brought that character to life.
Yeah, I love the creativity in this one. Like, I just kind of I think that you really took on that idea of doing a spaghetti western with synthesizers, and then like the shredding guitar and stuff, and just like, yeah, I think it mixes really well. And then instead of echoing toms like you usually do, you were echoing like horses and like the galloping beat, and just I think all those things came together in a really creative fashion. So
yeah, I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges that we threw at you two a lot, was where we were trying to find a way to make everything feel 80s, but also feel futuristic, but also pull references from the past. We were really just throwing all kinds of genres and eras at you, but saying, yeah, but overall they all need to feel like this 80s theme. And the way you guys were able to really blend all of those together throughout, the tracks we've heard and the tracks that are coming up, I think that's really a testament to the talent that you two have. So, well done.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So so that wraps up the sort of main character themes. And the next two tracks aren't character themes at all. They're sort of interlude tracks that Trevor and I created. And this is sort of to fill the transition from sort of the canonical Lazer Ryderz characters to some of the stretch goal characters, which we'll be hearing later from another multiverse.
Ooh.
So the first interlude track that we have is from Trevor.
Yeah, I'm gonna say a little bit about it. I really liked the idea of the laser shark's search for the blood nebula. That's in her backstory, and I thought it would be cool if there was this sort of like a scene in the cartoon or whatever where she's by herself, kind of off on her own, like searching. And then I also had an idea that during the racing there would be this sort of competitive, fun moment between all the riders, and I managed to combine them into one song. So this will be In Search of the Blood Nebula / Racing Fun. All right. And we're back.
So I have to admit, I love watching. I'm watching the chat here while this is going on, and Soulless Clover goes, "This takes me back to the '80s, and I wasn't even around in the '80s." And it's like, yes, mission accomplished.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting. It's almost like for anyone who wasn't around in the '80s and didn't really grow up with it, it's like '80s is sort of its own genre as opposed to a decade that actually ever existed.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I was there for like 3 or 4 years, maybe.
Actually, speaking of Soulless Clover, if I remember here, there's a question. What are those? Are they major sevenths, a whole step apart? So, Trevor, if you could answer that question, maybe tell us a little bit about putting this song together.
Yeah. No, that's a good ear. Like that's definitely exactly what's going on. Those are major seventh chords, and the progression is, for them to be a whole step apart. And that was kind of the initial bit of music that I kind of put together. And then after that, I thought, okay, you can build on this. You can, put some melodies and sort of work with the melody kind of is derived from that, and it sort of jumps around a bit, has sort of bigger leaps and jumps. I feel like it's sort of wandering around as I imagine the Laser Shark would have been. That's definitely it. I was gonna say one other thing, just that working on this piece in particular really got me into sort of exploring what the synth instruments could do. And that was something that we, Jean-Marc talked about a little bit earlier, but I just wanted to kind of re-emphasize how much fun it was to sort of dig in to working with instruments that you were basically, taking sine waves and square waves and triangle, saw, and you were building up the sounds, and you had a lot of flexibility to kind of determine, and you'd have things decaying or sustaining, adding reverb. It was just really fun to sort of mess around with what kind of stuff that they were working with the older synthesizers. I mean, the emulator that we were using has all those really cool variables, a lot of parameters to mess around with.
Yeah, it was pretty new for me too. I mean, I've worked with synthesizers before, but when I first started Sentinels, I knew nothing about them, so I'd just kind of load one up and select a good patch, and then away it'd go. But when we were getting into this, I kind of wanted to learn a lot more about what I was doing, and there's a really good hands-on synthesizer learning tool called Syntorial. I'll post that in the chat here. And basically, it's a very simplistic synthesizer, but it kind of introduces things to you one step at a time, and you have to reproduce sounds by ear, but it does it in a very slow progression, so you have time to get used to one idea before you move on to the next. And it was super, super helpful to sort of learn how synthesizers actually work and what they could do. And yeah, as far as this track was concerned, that first part there was sort of one of the first things I heard from Trevor, and I remember him being sort of unsure about it, and I was like, "What are you unsure about? This is really cool. Like, this is awesome." And he's like, "Well, I don't know what character it fits," and it's like, or rather, not what character it fits, but how it fits into the album, because it's not a character theme. And I was like, but that doesn't matter. It totally fits the album.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then he came up with Racing Fun and sent it separately, and then he had the idea of putting them together. And I really liked how the second part really reminds me of the original Super Nintendo Super Mario Kart. It just kind of has that sort of happy-go-lucky
it was very
let's just
upbeat.
let's just shoot things at each other and race around and have a good time, and it doesn't matter that you keep kidnapping the princess and I have to go beat you up all the time. So
minor details.
And so thanks for the questions. And if any of you if anyone else out there has any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, and we'll try and get to them if we can. And you know, I mentioned this in the chat, but it's sort of an on the table thing that if you know, are looking to or are already into this kind of music and you want to, you know, learn a little bit, you know, sort of, we spent months doing this, and but we're happy to sort of share some of the things we've learned and you know, get people started. So
definitely,
yeah, that's actually, I mean, a really good point. Like, Jean-Marc, you've been doing this for a while. Trevor, this was your opportunity to kind of jump back into something that you did go to school for, but you haven't been able to do in a little bit. And I remember particularly with In Search of the Blood Nebula, Racing Fun, and the Laser Shark theme itself. I remember, Trevor, you were like, I have all of these themes in my head, and I really like them, but they're not working together, and I'm not sure where to go with it. And so with these in particular, it was really cool to watch that creative process and to see, you know, for people who might be on the stream or who might listen to this later that are like, oh man, I want to make music, but these guys totally know what they're talking about, and I'm not sure. Like, for you, it was something where it was just like, this is what I feel, and this is what is speaking to me now. And then you kind of worked your way through it and figured out how to manipulate it and how to create not just one song, but 2 songs from it. And like, that whole process was really interesting to watch, kind of from, you know, my backseat perspective here. But I think it's good to point out to people in the feed, you know, these guys worked their butts off on this for months and months. And, you know, it wasn't always that initial first song. I wrote it once and I got it right. So Trevor, I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit or anything, but I thought that was really cool to see how these themes work together and how you went from going, I have 3 different things, to kind of figuring out how to fuse those into this one song.
Yeah, sure. I can talk a little bit about it. I think the combining of the songs is something that came about because I didn't feel like I had enough material for one complete song, but I really like transitions. I feel like a lot of my songs maybe have too many transitions, and maybe not enough just sort of sitting back and enjoying the groove, so to speak. But really what it boiled down to was I had a really great resource in Jean-Marc. He's, you know, already produced a lot of music and it's been released, and he's gone through the process and has definitely had a lot of pointers. So I was definitely, you know, I definitely knew how I wanted things to sort of be on a certain level, but getting them there to sort of that next level of, you know, let's put it all together and get the polish where it needs to be. It was really nice to have people listening, like Jen and Adam, and also Jean-Marc, who had a little bit more of the expertise to give me really fine-tuned pointers and suggestions along the way. So I definitely benefited from
it was
a lot of people.
It was really cool because it was one of those opportunities that don't always come along that I think are so cool, where you have like your original idea of what you're trying to achieve, and what comes from that quote unquote uncertainty is actually, you know, a better product, or you know, more ideas and more things to build off of. And so it really turns around into something quite good and really added to the soundtrack from, you know, all of that work that you did and building and fleshing those out. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, sure, we could talk about it more, but why don't we at least play another track for the fine chat folks here.
Sounds good. Here's another one.
Yeah.
This one is entitled Funkbuster. I don't know if, Jean-Marc, did you want to talk a little bit about it before I just throw it up, or how would you?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, this one wasn't actually like ever planned. It was more like I just kind of wanted to try doing some like funk synth pop kind of stuff. You know, similar to the background music you might hear in a Michael Jackson track, as opposed to like, you know, like just all those synthesized poppy sounds that they use, as opposed to using them for like that sizzly, like sunset sound.
Right.
And so, yeah, I just started, like, I just got into what I was doing and then developing it. And then I was like, oh, I kind of have a song here, but I don't know if this fits the soundtrack. But passed it by the team, and we're like, oh, well, you know, like In Search of the Blood Nebula and Racing Fun doesn't, you know, isn't tied to isn't a character theme, but we're putting that in there. So we're like, this could kind of be connected to Galactic Waveryder, but then we just decided it doesn't even matter if it is or not.
It was just so good.
All right. So now we have Funkbuster. Hit it.
Was that cowbell that I was hearing? It was
always more cowbell.
Yeah, there was a lot of cowbell.
Yeah, so as you could hear, it was just sort of like a fun interlude track. Kind of wanted to emphasize the like percussion and bass, and like those short, quick chords with like crazy vibrato on them, like crazy like. And yeah, I always liked those, and when I was younger, I always liked them, but of course I didn't know what was going on with them, so I just sort of figured out how to reproduce that, and I was like, oh yeah. So
well, this is, for me, it's a standout track in the album. I really liked the groove. It feels like that beginning, the intro tag, really reminded me of like just like a video game level start, like down 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 down. It was very very evocative of me, like in, I don't know, 3rd grade or 5th grade or something, playing a game.
Right. Right.
And also, I thought that this track definitely showcased. I was kind of joking with the cowbell, but I think Jean-Marc, you have a percussion background, and it really shines in this track. I think you kind of have a good command of that instrument. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm definitely a sucker for percussion instruments, but I try to like restrain myself a lot because I don't want to overdo it, because then everything would just be like a percussion solo. So but I just kind of let it go crazy a little bit in this one. So
yeah, I remember when you presented this, when it was kind of the same thing that Trevor had going on, where you had a clip and you were like, okay, this is stuck in my brain, I just want to toss it at you guys and see what you think. And we were like, oh, that's fantastic, like absolutely, we'll find a spot, let's put it in there. And it created a really nice transition for some of the next songs that are coming up. And so before we get into those, though, I believe there was a question in the chat.
There is.
I missed if you mentioned this at Jean-Marc, but is that you on the vocals in Funkbuster?
Yes, it is. That's my that's what my falsetto sounds like.
It sounds beautiful.
I had to do it a lot of times because I kept going out of tune. It's hard to keep a tone for that long because there's one note there that spans, I think, 4 bars. So, and keeping that in tune for a long time is tricky. But that's one of the joys of not doing this stuff live, is I can just do it over and over again.
Right. 3 days later, you're like, yeah, I guess that works. No, it came out great. So well done on vocals.
Thank you.
So like I said, these pieces weren't necessarily originally themes to our characters, but they made great transition pieces into the following songs, which are actually references to some of what we created as promo characters in the Kickstarter. And these are actually Sentinels of the Multiverse characters that have kind of found their way and woven into this side of the universe and into this storyline. So the following songs that we hear are actually references to some of, hopefully, your favorite well-known Sentinels of the Multiverse characters. So Trevor, if you want to take it away on the next song, give us a little bit of intro, tell us what we're in for.
Sure. So like Jen said, these are going to be some more kind of character things that we're doing. This is the first of our Sentinel comics kind of cross-in pieces. The game also featured some, there was some promo characters that you were able to play if you backed the Kickstarter. And the first one of these was Captain Cosmic. And we didn't go with naming the tracks after the names, but we did want to reference them in the name. So the first piece is called Interstellar Construct, and the theme of this piece is not mine. It's actually Jean-Marc's. And
was that a cue for me to follow up?
If you want to, yeah, that's
okay.
Totally a cue for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things about this, as people are pointing out in the chat, is that we're doing remixes for character themes, and 3 of them don't have their themes composed yet.
That's interesting, yeah, isn't that?
So that was just an interesting situation. Is like, so we're basically doing a remix of a song that doesn't exist. So what I did was like basically just gave Trevor an outline of Captain Cosmic's theme. Be like, this is sort of how it goes. So yeah, just make something 80s out of that.
Yeah.
This was another one of those, you want me to do what now? kind of moments.
Yeah. And so yeah, I gave that over. And then for this one in particular, Captain Cosmic's, the theme you're about to hear is actually like crazy close to what I had in my head. So yeah, I guess it's more like a variant of Captain Cosmic than it is like a completely different song. So anyway, so without further ado, Trevor Casterline's Interstellar Construct.
All right. Good. So, I guess I could say a little bit about this piece.
Yeah.
Most of it was like the heavy lifting. I feel like was done for me with this particular track. So, I basically wanted to take the bits of theme that Jean-Marc gave me and then 80ify it as much as I could. So that meant using guitar, that used synth, brass, electric piano, and I eventually kind of just decided to pass the melody along between those various instruments at different points, but a lot of guitar though. I felt that like there was a cool energy going between the guitar line and the bass line. So I definitely did a lot of that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you nailed it. Like I gave it to you, and it's sort of like, this is as much as I know how to explain, and then from there, it's like, I'm interested to see what you do, and then yeah, it was just like, yep, this is it, you nailed it.
Glad to hear it. That's what I was going for. So, happy you like it.
Yeah, and as somebody in the chat pointed out, it's sort of like a major version of Infinitor's theme, because Infinitor in Sentinel's lore, Infinitor and Captain Cosmic are brothers, but Infinitor's a villain, sort of not completely out of his own choice though. And if you listen to the heroic variant of Infinitor, it has like little bits and pieces of the theme hidden in there because him and his brother share a theme, but then it kind of gets corrupted and twisted, and like it never really catches on, and that's sort of deliberate. So this is sort of like, here's what it is with all that, here it is in sort of a pure forms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like what you do and continue to do with sort of paying attention to theme and sort of being very deliberate with how you relate different pieces of music together. So that was something that I was encouraged when we started doing this album together, like that we were both interested in doing that kind of stuff with themes. So there's definitely a lot of that goes on throughout the album, and obviously it's connected to the Sentinel's music outside of the album too.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what do we have up next?
So next we're going to go into Twist Your Mind. This one was also done by Trevor, and it was a combination of Trevor and Jean-Marc using some of the original arrangements from Visionary. And I'm excited about this one because this one has some parts to it that we haven't used in any of our prior songs yet, which would be vocals. So Trevor, Jean-Marc, if you want to talk about this a little bit before we listen to it.
Yeah, sure. I'll say a few things, and then I'll let Jean-Marc kind of finish it up. But briefly, this was the last track on the album to really get the final touches and to be fully complete. Mostly because I think it was just the most involved track. There was a lot of different things that we were trying to do with this track compared to everything else. Vocals was one of them. This track got started a little bit later for a variety of different reasons. One was just like we kind of had that whole, we need to make sure that the theme is a theme that we're remixing, that the original theme has to exist. And then also it was a situation where because of vocals we needed to have lyrics, so that took a little bit of time too. So
right.
But it was a super fun collaboration, and I would say it kind of bounced back and forth basically equally between Jean-Marc and myself. So there was a lot of here and there, all the way up to the end, going back and forth and kind of making changes. And I'm really happy with how it turned out, though.
Oh yeah, me too. And so the singer for this one, Heather Durham, is actually in the chat.
Oh, is she? Sweet. Hey, Heather.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Jenny or Jennifer Roos, who did the backup vocals, is also hanging out in our chat with us.
Sweet.
So
Cool.
Shout out to Jenny.
Okay, well, whole gang's here. All right, yeah, and so this one, if there are any Sentinels fans, there are elements of this one that should be familiar, but I think it would take a keen ear to really pick up on them. So I'll be curious to see if anybody points it out. But without further ado, let's listen to Twist Your Mind.
All right. Nice job, Heather. Those vocals sounded really great.
Yeah, that was that one's so. I'm gonna say it. That one's so tubular. I like it. I like a lot of how you really pulled. This was kind of our homage to, you know, Madonna and the Bangles and, you know, Gem and all of those great classic 80s female vibes. So this is probably my second favorite one on the entire soundtrack because of how well you just pulled all that together in one song.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was a lot of fun and a huge collaboration. It was definitely a lot of people involved with this one. So.
Yeah, it's I think anyone who doesn't make music, especially with a lot of people, like doesn't always realize that, like, when you work with a lot of people, that there's sort of a lot of back and forth and everyone contributing their own ideas, and in general, like you know, if everyone has the same vision,
Yeah.
vision, yeah, then you know, it sort of ends up better than just, you know, one person trying to do it, because then you sort of get like the sum of everyone's strengths in it.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely felt that way about this one.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, we had a bit of trickiness with the vocals. Trevor wrote the lyrics, and you know, he sent them to me because I don't really consider myself a lyricist, and Trevor is definitely more in the singing area than I am, and sent me his lyrical ideas, and I was like, yep. That's like that's it. Like, it suits the character in so many ways. But it also has that sort of like 80s like metaphor, sort of what are you even talking about element to it.
Yeah,
which is perfect.
I was definitely going for mysterious, but also true to the character. So I definitely wanted to maybe tell a little bit of a story, but also, yeah, keep things a little bit vague.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this, and yeah, again, thanks a lot to Heather and Jenny for offering their vocal talents to this track. I think that really, I mean, if we didn't have good vocals, it wouldn't have worked out. So we had yeah, it worked really well.
Yeah, it was really cool. The harmonies were there and everything, so it totally made it.
Awesome. So what have we got up next?
All right, so next we're going to get into Wings of Malediction. This one was written by Trevor, and again, using arrangements of themes from Jean-Marc Giffin. This one is the quote-unquote remix of for Apostate. So Jean-Marc or Trevor, if you want to explain a little bit, talk a little bit about it before, give us a little intro into the song.
Jean-Marc, how about you do the intro and I'll talk about it after?
Yeah, so if anyone plays Sentinels regularly, this is you know, a remix of a song that was already actually done and people actually knew it. And you know, if you listen to it, it's, you know, choir and organ, and it's based on the character Apostate, who's basically like a dark angel, and so it's kind of like Sephiroth-esque, for lack of better term. So yeah, again, it was time to take this sort of gothic music, like traditional gothic, not modern gothic music, and to try to turn that into well, 80s synthwave music. And so I was kind of curious what Trevor is going to do, and you know, he kept it dark, but it's totally different than it used to be. So without further ado, let's play Wings of Malediction.
All right. Well, that was Wings of Malediction. So yeah, I said I would say a few things, so I will. Yeah, this is definitely a darker synthwave, kind of metal-y inspiration of a thing. And this was the first song that I worked on in the album. So this is sort of an audition piece for Jean-Marc to make sure that he still wanted to co-compose with me. And yeah, I guess I wanted to say thanks to Jen for some creative direction on this one. I think there's a lot of like percussion elements and the guitar elements that I probably wasn't looking to use initially, but she kind of, got me thinking a little bit more darker. So I tried to beef things up with, the rhythm guitar. Yeah, exactly. And cymbals and, more distorted synths. And also I want to thank Jean-Marc for the use of the chime from the original song. So there's some continuity, but yeah, I definitely took the theme and I did some things to it. I guess I mostly slowed it down, I feel like, but yeah, so that was a lot of fun.
Not slowed it down as in removed any energy. You just like
just took it at a different tempo. Yeah, little different.
Yeah. I mean, this one was like night and day different than the original. So like basically, yeah, this was one of the first things you sent me, and then I don't know what my feedback was exactly, but it was something along the lines of, yeah, you know exactly what you're doing, just keep doing it. So
yeah, poor Trevor had to listen to me be kind of a broken record on this one, because he would send it and he'd be like, what do you think of this? And I was like, nah, it needs to be darker and harsher and really just rip into the guitar and bring some weight to it. And he was like, okay, but let me try something else. And then he came back and it was so cool to just see him really, just to see you push your limits and what you were thinking and start to stretch and build from your original sound. Like Jean-Marc said, from beginning to end, it totally turned around and it turned out amazing.
Well, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what's up next?
Oof, I really like the intro and outro of this next track. That's all I'm going to say. I really do like it.
Okay, so next up we have Rogue o' the North. So we have this one. This is the final Sentinels remix for you. But it's a track that prior to this particular soundtrack just had no reference before. So I forgot to mention that Gaines of Castamere correctly pointed out that Twist Your Mind is loosely based off of the Dreamers theme.
Ooh, well done.
Yeah, and
nice catch.
Yeah, because obviously it was a completely different style. So
yeah, it's interesting.
I was pretty impressed by that.
Yeah.
So yeah, this next one is based off of Knife, and yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Handelabra, with whom I do most of my spend most of my work days with, we did a Kickstarter last year for season 2 of Sentinels, the digital game, and one of the stretch goals was that I would be doing hero themes, and we had one stretch goal for season 1 and one stretch goal for season 2, and we made season 1 but not season 2. So that means I'll be doing 21 hero themes, sort of in no particular order or speed, and I've done I think three of them so far now, 3 or 4. And so, but one of the ones that didn't make it was Knife. And so when this came up, I couldn't even give Trevor something to work off of. I was like, I'm just going to have to come up with this as it's remixed. Like, I'm just basically going to skip entirely what the original would sound like and just
Skip
jump
the original.
right to the, So I talked to Christopher about that, and he was like, "Okay, well, traditional Scottish music in space." I was like, "Do you
No
want it to be
problem.
do you want it to be kind of dancey?" Yes. All right. So let's listen to Rogue o' the North.
Bagpipes in space.
Oh, I love it. It's a synthwave reel. It's so amazing.
So if you ever wondered what traditional Scottish music played in synthwave style would be like, I would actually say that one was probably more like early 90s, like kind of getting into trance a bit. But
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
sort of still in the era that we were
Mhm.
targeting. So
Mm-hmm. For sure.
This is definitely the song that gets stuck in my head the most after I hear it. Like I just find myself humming that tune, a couple hours later.
Yeah, the dotted rhythm is really cool. Like it kind of evokes that, I guess what would be her ancestry. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's actually both the song and the title, Rogue of the North, is based on a traditional Scottish tune. So I changed some of it, and then the do 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 do, like that is actually part of the track. But I mean, it's a traditional song, so I made sure that everyone was cool with me using that part.
Very good.
And super public domain because nobody even knows who composed it. So, all right. So that brings us near the end of the show. We have one last track, but we're not going to come back after we play it. So we'll just sort of do show wrap-up notes here. So first of all, a huge thanks to Greater Than Games for making awesome games. And in particular making this awesome game, and for wanting a soundtrack for it, and for hosting a listening party for said soundtrack. And thanks, as always, to my working family Handelabra Games for being supportive of the side project and for rehosting the stream. And be sure to stick around for Lou Dolphin. He hosts every week a Dolphins Dive, which is deep strategy on Sentinels of the Multiverse. If you haven't seen it yet, it's right after this. So it'll be on the Handelabra channel, and I think we're rehosting it here. But even if we're not, he's I believe around, so you'll want to check him out. And also, as a surprise to me, I see Oki Oki Panic in the chat. He's making a super fun party game I played at GDC called Super Slime Arena, which is kind of like a Super Nintendo Smash Brothers, but like you get all these random characters with different move sets all the time, and so you have to kind of figure them out as you're using them. But they're really creative, and like I had a blast playing this. And you can play it on any controller. I was playing on a Guitar Hero thing, and so and he invited me to do a music track for one of the arenas. So you can check that out here. Put that in the chat. And so we have a few other notes, and then we'll start talking about the last track.
Yeah. So first off, obviously, thank you so much, Jean-Marc and Trevor, for the countless hours of work that you put into this soundtrack. I know we threw a lot of weirdness at you, and remixes of things that aren't mixes yet, and everything else. But you two absolutely just astounded us every time you came back with another piece of the tracks and a new song for our characters. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for all the work you did, and thank you to Heather and Jenny for lending their beautiful vocals to the song. First time I heard that, I was like, oh, it's amazing. That's so good. You guys did a wonderful job as well. So thank you so much for all of your hard work on that. And also just want to give a shout out to the artist that I had the pleasure of working with. He goes by the tag of Blood and Chrome. You can find him on, I'm pretty sure he's on Tumblr, Facebook, some different things like that. But he did an amazing job capturing all of our out of this world ideas and making them a reality, bringing Sentinels characters to life with an 80s vibe and everything else. So I really enjoyed working with him. I hope everyone on the stream enjoyed seeing some of his artwork. And also, if you've enjoyed listening to the soundtrack and you kind of want to get an idea of how the game plays, be sure to check out Lazer Ryderz in action with Geek and Sundry's Twitch stream Game the Game. That'll be tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And hosts Ivan Van Norman and Becca Scott Kearns are going to be playing through an entire game of Lazer Ryderz. So you've heard the music. If you're curious to check out the game as well, be sure to head over to Geek and Sundry's Twitch channel to see that played.
All right. Anything else before we start talking about our final track?
I think we're ready for you to take it away.
How about we mention that right after this stream, the album is going to go live on Bandcamp. So anyone who is really interested in it can check it out. I believe the link is going to be this. It's private at the moment, but it will be public soon. So super big thank you to everybody who came and listened and supported us.
Absolutely.
And to all the backers, of course. All the backers who backed for the soundtrack got it early. As sort of as thanks for backing, and so that's been great. And so now we're happy to make this sort of available to everyone. All right, so our final track is sort of the credits theme of Lazer Ryderz. It's sort of the sort of like a wrap up to the whole album, and I insisted that it go last for that reason. Because anyone who's watched 80s TV shows or movies knows that like a lot of the credits, especially in like a happy ending, tends to be like super cheesy and sentimental.
Freeze frame, high five.
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
like yeah.
exactly. Freeze frame on a high five. So I wanted to really lean into that, and we also have a guest performer on this one, Sean Shafiensky. He's a part of the game music world and makes really impressive remasterings and arrangements of old game music. So be sure to check him out. But yeah, this is sort of our tear in the eye goodbye to the Lazer Ryderz. And Trevor, do you have anything you want to say?
Just that I feel like this track, the beginning of it's like my favorite part of the album. So I really like what you did with it, and it's a great end to a sweet collaboration. So
okay, well, let's feel the feels with Farewell, Lazer Ryderz.